Visible, sir.
Okay.
Uh,
Good morning, all. Welcome to this session. So today I'm going to take the session on the bell curve. Although it sounds very primitive, but believe me, I will make this session much interesting and interactive. So at the end of the session, we can have a question answer session. So please note down the slide number where you have any doubts. We can discuss at the end of the session, right? So let me start actually why this bell curve and all. Just 2 days back, I have a discussion with the organizer. Organizer want me that sir make it simple so that our audience has a vast spectrum of different expertise. They have the different domain of the mathematics. So I told, okay, ma'am, it's my responsibility now to make it simple as long so that it will reach as the maximum audience, the maximum spectrum of the audience. So let's welcome. So in the first, I'll like to go just start with the things. So let's comparison do between 1 decade back. So what are the best companies in working in the world in the year 2005? Walmart, ExxonMobil, General Motor, Ford, GE. So in today's date, 2019, the best company in world is what? Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet. There is a parent company of Google. Uh, all these companies. So you can notice the paradigm shift from the product-based company to all these database companies. So data is the new oil for this decade. Right? As the evolve of the digital computer, as the evolve of all digital computing facility, now the data science is now the hot take of this decade. So everyone is now right now what is the hot topic dream job of this decade is the data science, right? So if you go to any data scientist, they do a lot of mathematical calculation. It's not like that mathematics was not before. Mathematics was there, just all of a sudden after 2010 or 2014, all of a sudden a discipline evolves in India and the rest of the world, data science, right? So what is the common in the data science? Any data scientist, you go, their laptop, desktop, tablet, everywhere you'll find a curve. That is the bell curve. They use this bell curve or Gaussian distribution curve to forecast many things. Both data scientists working in finance and banking, they are working in e-commerce market. Either the data scientist working in insurance, IT, tourism, hospitality, airlines, manufacturing, anywhere where the data is there, the data science use this curve, that is bell curve, right? But the obvious question now it is come, what is this bell curve and what is the role of this bell curve? Why they are using, right? So they are using this bell curve to enterprise and forecast the demand, the distribution of the inventory, manage the supply and service, setting dynamic pricing, performance evaluation and performance appraisal, etc. But the question is come, why this bell curve? Is there any peculiarity in the bell curve or other curve we cannot use or this something special, right? Still, the thing is not known to a wide class of audience, right? It's a peculiar thing. Just like in the language of physics novel laureate Lippmann, everyone believes that the normal approximation, the experimental, because they think it's a mathematical theorem, and the mathematician believe it's an experimental fact. But reality, there is no pinpoint to answer why we use the bell curve. So in this topic, in this lecture, we'll cover details of the bell curve starting from the very beginning, small concept of the probability statistics, and gradually go what is the idea behind this curve, what exactly this curve is doing. The objective of this lecture is not to teach you data science, rather put some fundamental input that you are using in data science or any other statistical modeling, right? So let's first come to the thing, uncertain nature of the universe. Okay, if I tell you a thing random, right? Why I need modeling? Because things are not deterministic to me. I don't know the thing. That's why I'm doing statistical modeling. So if I do the same, so let's come to the thing that is called random, right? So to understand the meaning of the term random, let's take a very simple ordinary differential equation, right? This is second order ordinary differential equation. This x double dot they stands for the acceleration, x dot they stands for the velocity, x stands for the position, right? This is a force vibration equation, right? But here, what is the peculiarity of this equation? The peculiarity of this equation is that it's non-linear. This is a non-linear forcing term. The non-linear terms appears here in the terms of x cube. To understand the uncertainty, let's numerically solve those vibration or equation, right? I did it with the MATLAB standard RK4 method. I did the solution of this nonlinear equation. So what is the thing I did it? I did it for 2 points, right? This is for any initial condition and initial velocity. You can have a solution and it will evolve with the time. I start the solution with same velocity, but initial condition just I take first condition 1.0 at the initial position, and second point I give little bit perturbation to the initial position 1.001. There maybe if you are measuring by the vernier caliper, this is just a least count of the vernier caliper kind of thing, where some are measurement error that initially you are triggered as your input. You can see over here two condition I have taken. One is 1.0, one is 1.001. I did the numerical solution of it, right? This is all MATLAB code of the RK4 method. So I can supply this code at the end of this session. So, okay. So what the result you can now see? The interesting fact is the result, right? With respect to time, the solution evolves. The the position is oscillate with respect to time. You can see this is the time graph with respect to the initial condition position 1.0. This is the time graph with respect to the initial condition 1.001. A slight perturbation I give initially. So what is the result when I take the subtraction from this to this? Okay, I take the magnitude. We can see after a long time, initially there is a no difference, but after a long time, the difference between the two signals, they start to amplify and they start to behave randomly, right? Although the things are very similar proximity, the initial condition, there is a small change in initial condition, results in a large change in the final result. If I go for the trajectory of the velocity and the velocity field and the trajectory of the two particles, if an x1 and x2 they are very close to each other, then they are supposed to be what? Straight line, but they form a chaotic pattern, right? They form a chaotic pattern, both position and velocity, right? So as time progress, if you run it for long and long time, you can get more and more chaotic profile, right? So this is what result this chaotic profile. If I replace my xq in terms of the x over this equation, absolutely I will get there is a straight line, there is no chaos. But as long as this non-linearity is there, I will get a chaotic solution, right? So although my system is deterministic, right, a little bit perturbation in the system, the result this apparent randomness. Instead of the randomness, I will call it as a apparent randomness, right? Because of the non-linearity. Okay, so let's come. This is a simple nonlinear equation I have shown to you, but in reality, we deal with a very highly nonlinear system. That is fluid flow, Navier-Stokes equation, Stephen's law of radiation, Black-Scholes equation for finance, Volterra equation for biology, right? So all this highly nonlinear system we have with us. At the same time, our measuring device has finite precision. We cannot double precision up to certain particular digit. We can share the file, the decimal file, okay, up to some digit accuracy. After that, it will truncate it. And computational algorithm has some accuracy, first order accuracy, Taylor series just like second order accuracy, like any finite precision below the least count. Okay, just if you are measuring the experimental, you have some device least count. Similarly, if you are doing computation, there is some least count that is above which the accuracy is getting truncated, the numerical scheme or the precision by the computer getting truncated. Okay, so because of the least count, the measuring device, the generator or the instrument, they generate a chaotic solution. Because of the non-linearity, this truncation, they with respect to time, they blows up and results a chaotic solution. Although your system is deterministic, but at the end, what you get? You get some chaotic solution. But in reality, what you need? You need some deterministic. Our aeroplane need to be fly. Although you design the aeroplane out of this chaotic measurement, but it needs to be performed properly. It needs to be fly properly. Our boiler then needs to provide particular deterministic temperature, pressure, right? So to do that, there is this language called probability that is quantify the uncertainty. Right now, we understand what is randomness. Because of our limitation in the measuring device, because of the computational facility, some results are beyond our scope to properly predict. That is the uncertainty. although there is not any pinpoint language, but this is the realization of the uncertainty, right? To but in a deterministic world, to find out the solution, to use it in day-to-day life, we need some confidence or the deterministic solution, right? Fortunately, probability is responsible for many random process. If you have a random process, I can use the theory of probability. I cannot properly tell what is the one value of the point, but I can, with a confidence, I can tell, okay, this may be the possible value of the point, right? So probability is the art of searching likelihood or possibility of the occurrence of a particular event or object among all the possible space of occurrence, right? Just like tossing a coin, head or tail, there are two outcomes. Getting a head is 0.5, right? But again, this is a circular definition of the probability. As long as your system is discrete, your system is finite, this definition works. Once you have a continuous or infinite system, this definition is not okay. Just like Bertrand paradox or Buffon's needle problem. So the same definition is not going to work. So as the definition of the probability, they change its notion with the development. In modern mathematical theory, probability doesn't have any definition. Just like in Euclidean geometry, even if today's date, point, line, plane, they don't have any proper definition. Similarly, probability don't have any proper definition. It's just a realization, right? So even in the 19th century, one of the great or greatest, I can tell, statistician or mathematician of the era, Kolmogorov, he has a many modern realization or the definition of the probability. It's a function that maps the event space to the probability space, right? But we'll avoid such advanced thing. Now proceed to the basic thing, right? So once we go for the probability theory, we'll start some primary history, how it evolves, how it is used, and what exactly it is, right? If you go to the human history of 8,000 years, we'll find the probability theory without knowing much of the mathematical details. It was started sometime around 5,000 years back in Egyptian civilization. What they did in Egyptian civilization, they made some dice out of the bones of the sheep, dog, or deer. Okay, they mark something in the dice just shown over here, different marker they put on the different side of the dice. They throw it on towards the top, and this dice is allowed to land, okay, on the ground. So based upon the which side face to the top, the outcome was decided, right? This is just like a you can compare. It's a modern ludo dice kind of thing. They called it Ostrogulis. Even if you have nowadays, Mahabharata is very popular in DD National. You can see in the Mahabharata, Shakuni in those days, Mahabharata used to play the Pasapali. This is the same kind of thing. You can imagine this is made of the bone. This is 5,000 years back. It is in the Egypt civilization, right? Then around 4,500 years back, the broad game named Royal Game of Ur, it was designed in the Mesopotamia. Today's that the Iraq, which is one of the highly civilized civilization, highly literate civilization of the world. The game was played between two people, okay, and the outcome was a combination of the lock and the strategy. The lock person involved rolling a dice and getting a number, and the strategy is to accordingly move the dots, right? It is just a replica of modern days Ludo kind of thing. This was the old days of probability used in the civilization, right? So again, once the Mesopotamia involves of when the Roman Empire started, then the Roman Emperor Augustus, Vitellius, they were the famous gamblers. They love gambling. Okay, they used to enjoy the modern random pattern. That came out of the Astragalus repeatedly. Okay, so compared to the old days Astragalus, the Roman Empire they started modern days Ludo dice kind of thing, which is what uniform distribution. That is so that it results any unbiased result. Maybe because of the curvature, because of the center of mass. If you throw it, it may be result some bias outcome. This ancient Austragalus made of the bone. In the Roman Empire, they have fine Ludo dice kind of thing, which is produce any unbiased result. Okay. Then what they do, the empire used to throw the dice based on the outcome. They used to take the result. Whether this year they have to do certain tax collection or revenue collection or not, they used to throw the dice and take the decision, right? So it is not sure whether the Rummy, this is again highly randomizing as play, this Rummy, the cards, it is not yet clear in the history whether this was originated from the East or it's from the Roman Empire. But after the available of the printing machine, if all the cards are full throughout the civilization, Roman civilization around 14th century, and it was largely played. Although initial days the church society used to pierce against the player rummy, but again it was become famous as the highly randomized source of the gambling or any other game on those days, right? So for a long time, okay, as because these are the randomizing agent, for the long time, the people believe the whatever the outcome is coming out of this game, they are the decision of the god. Okay, that's why no one used to interfere or manipulate any of the outcome coming out of the god. Even Greeks or the Romans, they play for the decade with this randomizing agent, but they did not try any to understand the outcome mathematically, right? Most of the scholars of the Roman scholars, they were adopted Aristotelian philosophy or the philosophy of the church, which is telling world is deterministic, which is unknown. It is God's wish. We don't need to know that things, right? So God is playing the dice. So on the same logic, Einstein rejected quantum mechanics for a long point of time because it's based on the principle of the probability. He told God was not playing the dice. He was also interested some kind of deterministic view of the quantum mechanics, while was the quantum mechanics was a highly stochastic process, right? Possibly the philosophy of Aristotle and Plato, those days forbidden the Roman naturalists and limited their view to explore any mathematical details. Even if you can see in our Mahabharata, all these Pandavas, they even place the dice. They do not care. They do not complain about the outcome, what is coming out of the dice, right? So, but always the God is not playing the dice. Even if the 16th century, the Italian Renaissance mathematician Cardano, he rejected that the divine intercession in the game of chance. He told if God is not playing the dice, whatever is coming there because of some pattern, because of some nature of the mathematics, he tried to intersect that, and for the first time, he want to bring some reasoning, logic, mathematics to analyze the odds and possibility of winning. This is the point where the modern probability theory they starts out of the 1,000 years game of this uncertainty dice and card, right? After losing much money, he was a gambler. After losing much money in the thing, he started reasoning how to win, what is the probability, what is the chance of winning those things. So he wrote a book on that, Livo di Ludo Ale. It's in the Italian version in 1663, based on the reasoning and perception equivalently shifted the paradigm of divine's act of the mathematics, right? So Cardano introduced the idea of numeric value of the probability was the first who concept that probability is a thing that lies between 0 and 1 whose outcome is random. Cardano also developed the law of large number. We'll discuss in details what is the law of large number. If P is the probability of success of an event in a single trial, then after a large number of trial n, its probability of success is NP. Please note this point. Later in the derivation, we'll see what he derived on 16th century. On the end of 19th century, mathematically same is proved. Okay, just coming to the analogy side, you can see if always the rolling of the dice outcome was the divine's or the act of God, this is not always clear. Even if the Hindu mythology, if the outcome of the dice was the act of God, against the act of God, Krishna came to save the to preserve the dignity of the Draupadi in the Kurusova, right? So always God was not playing the dice, man was playing the dice, and he was thinking that God was playing the dice, and outcome was based on the God. Okay, this is a part. So let's keep aside. Let's come to the mathematics part. Okay. So the modern probability theory started from the Italian after Cardano. There is another Renaissance mathematician of Italy. His name is what? His name is Galileo Galilei. He discussed a little about randomness in his article. A trivial question came to the mind of Galileo. Okay. So why the number 10 and 11 appears more frequently in the throw of 3 dice than the number 9 and 12? Ludo dice, 3 Ludo dice simultaneously roll. The sum, it was coming 10 and 11 appear more frequently than 9 and 12. He want to find out the reason. Okay. when he did some mathematics, he noticed that there are 16 possibility of numbers that can be obtained from the rolling of 3 dice simultaneously, and the lowest was 3 and maximum was 18, right? There are only one way to obtain 3 and 18 out of the dice rolling, whereas other numbers of the sum have multiple ways of appearance. This essentially provoked Galileo to find out that sum of 10 has 27 possible ways of appearance compared to sum of 9, which are only 25 ways of appearance. That's why the 10 or 11 they appear more number of times. I can show it gradually as graphically what exactly it means. Quantifying the random outcome using the principle of counting, it was led by Galileo, and it is formed the stone of foundation stone of probability theory, right? Galileo himself did not use any language or named it as a probability theory. Surprising, what Galileo did, that was available in the Latin poem De Ventula mentioned by Bishop in the of Cambrai in 261 ways that can be done in a long back, right? So you can see over here, Galileo was interested in 3 dice. Here I have just prepared a 2 dice game. You can see why the appearance of the sum of 2 outcome 7 has more number of weight than 5 or 9, right? For a 2 dice game. Similarly, what Galileo did, it was for 3 dice game, right? It is clear. This starts the principle of counting in the probability theory, right? So it was old as Renaissance mathematics. The theory of modern probability started by 2 mathematicians. Those days, French used to be a hub for scientific revolution, right? There are 2 Frenchmen, very Fermat. Fermat is very famous mathematician. Fermat theorem, lot of theorem is there, and Blaise Pascal. Okay. So the French and Italy, they used to be a scientific hub in the 17th century. Scientists, mathematicians, they used to meet frequently in the house of Marie Mersenne, okay, for discussion on the mathematics things. The young Pascal was the frequent visitor to the place. A lot of scientists, mathematicians came to that place. Once famous French gambler, okay, Sevilla Demere met with young Pascal and asked him to find the best possible alternative between throwing a fair die 4 times and get 6, and throwing a 2 fair die 24 times and getting a double 6. We'll solve this problem. This is called Demire problem. In the next slide, we'll solve it, right? Pascal eventually contact with the Fermat for the solution in 1650. Fermat and Pascal had a series of letter communication between July to October. In both letters, they solved this Demire problem and many other problems related to card and this dice game, and that eventually lead to the first mathematical printed form of the mathematical thing regarding to the probability, right? What he did, the theory of probability, initially Fermat and Pascal used a combinational theory, what you call combination right now. At that disposal, when a coin is tossed twice, it has 4 possible outcomes: head head, head tail, tail head, tail tail. If you don't take any order into consideration, head tail or tail head, the mathematical probability of each event to occurrence, there is something represented by the binomial coefficient. The head head can occur in 1 way, head tail or tail head they can occur in 2 way, tail tail they can occur in 1 way, right? The respective binomial coefficient, they represent the number of occurrence, right? So total number of occurrence is how much? How many times? 4 times. So what is the occurrence of head head? 1 by 4, right? So what is the occurrence of head tail? 2 by 4, right? So similarly, if you have a 3 times, if we roll it, if you can do the binomial expansion for exponent 3, you will get the result. What is the 2 head, 1 tail, 1 head, 2 tail, or 3 tail, you will get it. Okay. So then to find out this kind of solution, what they did, Pascal started using a triangle, which is famously known as Pascal triangle. It is appeared in the work of Pascal because this represents the binomial coefficient in the diagonal edge. 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 3, 1. So likewise, if number of exponent it goes on increasing, this was they get it from the triangle, right? So based on this, they started what? The combination without considering the order of the occurrence. This was a combination. The Pascal and the Fermat, they found the combination theory effective over here. How many number of ways they can be combine with each other. So they based on that they started with NCR, or that is modern day we known as combination, which is nothing but n divided by r factorial in n minus r, where r number of ways r object they can be selected from the total n distinct object. Okay, so they started it. This is what Pascal triangle, and surprisingly, this Pascal triangle, okay, the long before Pascal or Fermat did it, Indian mathematician Bhaskara knew the general formula about the permutation and combination of the object in 1150 after Christ, right? Based on the from India, this knowledge spread to Europe and Arab, right? The binomial expansion and corresponding arithmetic triangle coefficient originated also from the Hindu and Arab mathematics, right? Pascal triangle was found earlier work of Chinese mathematical Chu Si in 1303 AC, but it was not found in the European before 16th century. Though you can imagine the Asian subcontinent, either India, Arab, or China, this work was present much before it was found in 16th century in the Europe. Okay, let's come to the next thing. What happened to the next? Okay, earlier famous Italian mathematician in the 16th century, okay, Niccolo Tartaglia, he gave the binomial coefficient up to n equal to 12, obtained through addition rule, okay, principle of counting. Cardano itself, the first man in the mathematical interpretation of the probability, used also such triangle for the derivation. But for the large number, it was quite difficult to count, because if you look at the thing also, even today's date, I'll show it in the later slide, the calculating the factorial is not that easy. So that was not that easy. Up to certain finite number n equal to 12, it was calculated. Before that, Cardano calculated for some finite things. The measurement extended the Cardano and Tartaglia will for a combination of n equal to 36 in 1636 for this application of the arrangement of the musical notes. Okay. Finally, Pascal he published unified theory of combinational number and binomial coefficient in 1654. Coefficient of the term a to the power r and b to the power n minus r in the expansion of a plus b to the power n, which is available in modern day algebra, is expressed NCR for n greater than equal to 0 and r any value between 0 to n. But unfortunately, after this invention, Pascal became a religious pastor and he gave up the mathematician. If a beautiful and a highly talented mathematician, he became a religious pastor. He tell goodbye to the mathematics. But the mathematics did not stop there. So the problem given by this was a famous, the photograph is a famous Italian gambler, Sevilla Di Mere. The problem he gave to Pascal, that for the late Pascal for the invention of the probability theory. Okay, so what is the best possible alternative between throwing a fair die 4 times and getting a 6, throwing two fair dice 24 times and getting double 6? Okay, let's calculate it. This problem, of that problem, it is not be much clear. What is the sample space of throwing a single die? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 number of outcome. What is the event? Event of getting 6 is equal to 1. Okay. What is the number of way we cannot get 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Other than 6, we will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So probability of getting 6 is how much? 1 by 6. Probability of not getting 6, how much? 5 by 6. 1 minus 1 by 6. Probability of not getting 6 in all trial outcome is how much? Probability of not getting 6 in all trial outcome is 1 minus complementary probability to the power 4 equal to 1 minus 5 by 6 to the power 4 equal to 0.518. This is for the one trial. The probability was 0.518 for not getting 6. So 1 minus this was the probability of getting 6, right? The sample space size of rolling 2 dice was 36. If you draw the two dice simultaneously, what is the sample space? 36. Probability of getting double 6 equal to how much? 1 by 6. Because if you go graphically, even if the table we forget, the double 6 probability is how much? One way that can be arranged, right? So the probability of getting double 6 equal to how much? The 1 by 6. Probability of not getting double 6, 35 by 36, right? Probability of not getting single double 6 in 24 trial, just again 34, 1 minus 35, 36 or 24. So 0.419. So the first option is much better, right? So this is how the young Pascal and Fermat use the modern day probability theory to get the answer what the gambler Demire asked them. So like that, a lot of things in the probability they came out of from the gambling of the card game or ludo game, this kind of thing, right? So then it was the little bit intermediate age of the probability. Then after the Pascal, there is a famous young Dutch mathematician. His name is Christian Huygens. He visited Paris and he was fascinated by the theory of dice game. On his return to Holland, he started solving several other games, those who are already solved by Pascal format and some additional thing, right? So based on the from his mathematical computation or the outcome, he also wrote a book, okay, on the reasoning of game of dice in 1657, which was the first mathematical book on probability and helped many other mathematicians to learn the probability for 50 years time, right? This treatise of Huygens introduced the definition of probability. There's the whole definition of probability as an event and quotient variable causes the case. He also introduced the concept of mathematical expectation, that is the mean, elaborated the Cardano idea of expected value of the random variable, all those preliminary things about the probability or the statistics theory. It was led by the foundation, was led by Huygens, right? After that, there was a famous Swiss mathematician Bernoulli. He is one of the outstanding mathematician from the Bernoulli family. During the mid of 17th century, English mathematicians Sir Isaac Newton and Leibniz, German mathematician Leibniz, they discovered what? Calculus. After the discovery of the calculus, a decade-old unsolvable problem in mathematics, they were solved, right? Swiss mathematician Jacob Bernoulli was the first to recognize the importance of calculus because Fermat, Pascal, all those derivations are before calculus. This Bernoulli, he understood the importance of calculus in the probability theory and used those calculus to derive the probability theory. Bernoulli was first impressed by the book of Huygens and several correspondence with Leibniz for the development of probability theory. In the contemporary time, Bernoulli wrote Art of Prediction or Ars Conjurandi, right? Normally, Bernoulli wrote it, but he could not publish. After his death, his nephew, Jack, published that book. Okay, art of conjurandi purview the subject beyond the dice and till now, whatever available to probability, they basically deal with the dice and card game. Then what Bernoulli did, he extended the scope of a probability theory beyond the card and dice game, prediction of various uncertainty in the life, like criminal justice, computation of the human mortality along various civil, moral, and social and economic problems, right? So after the death, the book, after the death of Jacob Bernoulli, the book was published with the effort of his nephew, Nicolas Bernoulli. Okay, it stands an inceptor for the application of probability in physics, engineering, and astronomy. The arts of conjurandi, Bernoulli discussed very famous theorem like law of large number. This is what we will discuss exactly the next. What is law of large number? So Bernoulli, long back in 17th century, he predicted law of large number and derived that theorem. And he almost took 20 years. Till now, every year we are publishing 2-3 papers, right? It took 20 years for Bernoulli to derive a single equation on law of large number based on a lot of experience, a lot of computation. If two events are, what he concluded, if two events are not influencing each other, just they are called independent events. Just like tossing a coin, getting a head or tail, they do not influence each other. Bernoulli used the binomial expansion of an event p and its complement q equal to 1 minus p for a large exponent n. And this is known as Bernoulli's binomial distribution of the random variable having r success at trial in n trial. Bernoulli made important. Okay, Bernoulli made an important explicit relationship what we observe and what within modern process. Right? Let's understand what is Bernoulli trial. Okay, Bernoulli trials are just binomial trial. Toss a coin. What is the probability of getting a head? Either it is 0 or either it is 1. Okay, so if probability is not getting head, if it is 1 or 0. If Bernoulli trials are conducted for n number of time, you toss the coin for 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, the success P of each trial, sum of the likelihood between I and J success. Trial, then Bernoulli give the formula. Suppose this is my once you toss a coin, okay, the probability of getting head equal to 0.5. Okay, you toss the coin 10 times, what is the probability of getting 3 head, right? If this kind of problem is only solved with the help of combination and the series summation, right? So consider, just solve a problem to consider. Consider tossing a ludo die 10 times and calculate the probability of getting index 3 each time. So you toss the ludo dice 10 times and every time you want to get a 3, right? Probability of getting 3 from the first roll is how much? 1 by 6. Okay, then probability of not getting 3 equal to how much? 5 by 6. So in r equal to how much in this case? 10. N equal to 10. On each trial, if you can consider r equal to 1, r equal to 2, r equal to 3, if you go on computing, it will give you the right side. I have computed it in the MATLAB. You can compute what is the probability. You will get the index 3 each time. As you go on increasing, the probability will gradually goes on increasing, and all the probability, if you add it, this will give you a sum 1, right? This is what the Bernoulli trial is. Now come, so what is the problem actually with the Bernoulli, Pascal, Fermat? As I told, the problem on computing was the factorial. For computing this combinational digits, we need to compute the factorial, even if the factorials are finite, because big term is very difficult to store in today's digital computer. In MATLAB, I calculate the factorial of 5, it is 120. Factorial of 20, it is something order of e to the power 18. Factorial 150 is e to the power 262. Factorial of 200 infinity, right? So even if the ratio is there, but storing a big number, even if the ratio is there, they are going to cancel each other. But storing a big number is a huge burden in those days, and computing was not so easy. Okay, so after Bernoulli, there is another Renaissance mathematician. He was basically a French, but he exodus to Britain. He started his career from Britain. He is De Morgan. He started the law of large number. What he did in his work, okay, he used the Stirling and gamma function. These are the Stirling function, these are gamma function. Then what Bernoulli is the series over there, okay, he modified the combinatorial theory by this formula. Okay, so by this exponential formula, to calculate NCR, the whatever within the summation, he used this formula to replicate that thing. So all of a sudden, what happened? The burden of calculating the combinational digit over here, NCR, that is gone. Okay, the things are much simple to calculate. Okay, so De Morgan approximate the binomial coefficient, and when for because of the simplification, it was easy relatively, even if without computer those days, for computing the digit for a large number of tries, right? 18th century, this he wrote an excellent book on understanding of the probability, and he started simply in gambling problem, then derived a solution, gradually moved towards the complex problem. Towards the end of the book, De Morgan approximated the binomial coefficient with a relatively easy to compute normalized function using Stirling's function and formula and gamma function. Right? This is the Stirling. Hello, madam. Anything from your side, voice? Okay. So this is the Stirling formula and this is the gamma function. So what the result? Okay. Up to here, if you look, what Bernoulli did it for 10 number of trials, right? So after the simplification of the De Morgan did the same thing, tossing a coin or a ludo dice and getting a 3. He did it instead of the 10, he did it for 20 number of trials. Okay, he got some pattern like this. Then he continued for 100 number of trials, right? Then he got some pattern like this. Can you notice this beautiful pattern? That's the law of large number. For a large number of trials, De Morgan got an exciting profile. Even if you go on increasing the number, the profile looks similar, right? This looks like a modern days bell, right? So in the temple or those days in church, this is looks like a bell. That's why it is called a bell curve. Okay. So in the modern time, now we'll call it a Gaussian or normal distribution. Why we call it, I'll explain in the later chapter. But from the De Morgan, the shape of the profile he got for the distribution, it is exciting and it looks like a bell. So that's why it famous become as a bell curve, right? So, but The thing is that De Moivre's derivation was valid only for the discrete form, just like a ludo or tossing a thing, tossing a coin, those kind of thing. Okay, so application of chord, apart from this, De Moivre, what, so the application of this bell curve in various other field of the science and engineering, apart from the game of chance or the ludo or dice game, right? So this is the law of large number. The idea of law of large number originally postulated by who? Cardano. It got the legitimate by mathematician Jacob Bernoulli. The bell-shaped curve distribution was given by De Moivre, right? So gradually, okay, the name law of large number was coined by mathematician Poisson, right? Gauss derived the modern day mathematical formula for the law error curve, that is called Gaussian distribution, and subsequently it recognized when independent measurement as average. Will come to know how the astronomical measurement they are match with the Gauss formula, how Laplace named it as the central limit theorem. Toward the end of this lecture, we'll show this thing. Okay. So few common things. Now we move from the 17th century, 18th century mathematics to modern days probability and statistics. To before going those things, we need to understand few basic words in the statistical theory. Okay. The if what are the continuous variable, what is the discrete event, those things. If the total number of random variable in the sample space is finite, then this is called a discrete random variable, right? In the limiting case, if the distance between two random variables is very small and decreases to zero, then the sample space is ideally a continuous random variable, right? Either discrete random variable or a continuous random variable, often they are characterized using a single point summary statistics, right? These single point statistics are known as average, right? If I give you average, what kind of average you will take? Okay, this average represents the central position with the range of data. Hence, they are known as the central tendency, right? There are three kinds of central tendency to represent those average. Those are mean, median, and mode. Mean is what? This is the arithmetic average of the all sort of random number or the outcome of the random number. But this is highly erroneous. Imagine someone is living in the vicinity nearby home of the Antila Mukesh Ambani. If I am doing a statistical survey in the area, calculating average income of the people living nearby Mukesh Ambani, all will be billionaire. In that case, the mean will give a fake information, right? Similarly, median gives the exactly mid value of the range of the data. Suppose you have a guitar, you know the chord diameter from small to high diameter. So the median will give them intermediate or middle value of the diameter of the chord that is used in the guitar. More, this is the random number which gives the highest frequency. If you are doing an audience voting in the reality show, if you are doing a exit poll, those kind of thing, who has the highest frequency of the voting and all, this kind of central tendency is used to represent more, right? So statistical movements. Okay. The let's come. What is the statistical movement? The first statistical moment as is known as the mean. Okay, or the expected value of the random variable. For a continuous random variable, the expected value is known as it the expected equals to mu. Normally, it is represented by the Greek symbol mu minus infinity to infinity x f of x dx. Okay. So let me clear one thing. This random variable x its value is not constant. This f of x is known as probability density function. Means you have a thermometer, so you have the duty to measure the temperature. Imagine to my ideally, if I give you a point, I ask you to measure the temperature at a point. What you need to do? You need to put the thermometer probe into that point and measure the temperature. Ideally, you can exactly measure the temperature over the point once the thermometer point area of the thermometer probe the reduced to zero size. Otherwise, what will happen? Different point in the thermometer probe, they will give a different value of the temperature. To represent it or to prescribe it in a one value, you have to find the average. Similarly, this probability density function is a function, mathematical function, which when operate on a random variable, did exactly pull out its value at that point, right? So if you do the summation of all possible value of value of the random variable multiplied by this probability density function, you will get average value, just like a thermometer you get a temperature, right? The probability density function. Yes, yes, madam. Any comment? Okay. The probability density function, they have bear some property. The probability density function is a positive quantity, and the sum of the probability density function equals to 1. Just like simple probability we have seen earlier, f of x is always greater than 0, and f of x dx in minus infinity to infinity integration, this should be 1. Okay, this is the first statistical moment. Similarly, the second moment, mean is not enough to give a single summary of a set of random variable. Okay, suppose you have a shoe manufacturing unit. Okay, if you know the mean size of the shoe 8, it doesn't help you to manufacture only 8 size shoe. You need to know the variation of the foot size, so then you can manufacture a shoe from 8 to 10, 6 to 10, that range. So the variance or the range or the spread, that is given by the second moment of the statistics, that is x minus mu. This is the second central moment. The mean was deducted from the random variable and then multiplied with the f of x, means existence multiplied with the probability density function to find the existence of the value at that point. When it is average over the domain, it gives the variance, right? The variance, its positive square root, is known as what? Standard deviation. Okay, this is the second moment. So let, for the Bernoulli trial, calculate what is the mean and what is the standard deviation. If you go calculate, put all this De Morbius formula and calculate the instead random variable, that's a minus infinity to infinity. If it's a discrete variable, what you do? Replace this integration sign with a summation sign from 0 to n. Instead of minus infinity to infinity, the summation sign will move from 0 to n. Okay, represent Bernoulli's formula over here. What Bernoulli, De Morbius formula over here. What Bernoulli, De Morbius, they did it. Okay, and now calculate for the Bernoulli trial. Calculate the mean. Okay, if you do it, finally you will find it what? The mean value or expected value is what? N into P. So I told you somewhere to note that before much of the mathematics discovery, Cadena somewhere, okay, he calculated the probability of the success close to NP based on the computation. After a lot of mathematical discovery, finally we come to a point, okay, so finally I come to a point where we found the expected value of the Bernoulli trial equal to NP. Similarly, if you go for the second mathematical moment computation for the Bernoulli trial, okay, after computing or putting all this algebraic computation and computing the value, you will find the variance is something NP into 1 minus P. This for the Bernoulli trial. Clear? So now understand what is the statistical, higher order statistical model. There is a third order central statistical moment of the random variable, which is known as skewness, right? This measures what? The symmetry or the asymmetry of the distribution, right? Similarly, there is a fourth order central random variable, which is known as hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. We are able to hear, sir.
I got a notice that host has muted you.
Yeah. Just. Okay.
Okay.
You can hear. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, let's compute. These are some MIT database from ECG. Okay, I'll understand what is this skewness and all. Okay, these are some ECG data. Okay, these are the time series ECG data I got. Then I calculate, find out the frequency distribution. Okay, if I do the frequency distribution, you can see over here the all the spread, they're equal across the mean value. Okay, across the mean value, spreads are equal. So in that case, how much? This is a symmetric data, right? Here across the mean value, this is right skewed data. Right side, it has a long tail, right? Similarly, this data has a left skewed data. Across the mean value, left hand has a high tail compared to the right hand. This is a left skewed data, this is right skewed data, this is a symmetric data. This kind of symmetric distribution was determined by the third central statistical moment of the skewness. Similarly, whether the flat, whether the steep, those kind of things are determined by the kurtosis, right? So now come, there is another concept, then we move to the bell curve or the normal distribution Okay, the third thing and the important thing is that cumulative distribution function. Okay, so we calculate the probability minus infinity to infinity f of x dx is equal to, sorry, this will, I missed somewhere, this will be x f of x. Okay, f of x dx equal to how much? This is equals to 1, right? The cumulative distribution function fx measures the sum of probability of a random variable x less than equal to 1. If you do it minus infinity to infinity, this is equals to 1. Suppose you want to know less than a, what is the probability, right? So you do what? You will replace the upper limit infinity by a and do this integration. Then you will get this capital F of x, which is nothing but cumulative distribution function or cumulative probability density function, right? So again, if you differentiate this with respect to x, the integral sign will come. This will come df by x by dx is equal to probability density function. Okay, this is clear. This is cumulative distribution function and the probability density function. This is the relationship between them, right? So now come to the error curve. Now we have moved from the long Italian things to the modern development of British in the post calculus, the probability theory. Now see how mathematical derivation get the experimental validation and become the theory, right? So during the thing, after breaking the Aristotelian dogma, because earlier it is forbidden to look at the sky, measure the movement of the planet, star, etc., because it was forbidden by church society, all those things. But those days, highly talented people like Copernicus, Galileo, all those things, they did a very fantastic observation to the sky and astronomical invention. They did it. So from the astronomical data recording, Galileo postulated few things about the error. What is the error? There is, suppose, Earth and Sun distance. You want to measure several or time of the year you measure, you will get several distance. Several device you will measure, you will get the several distance. There is not any single value. Just like we had did the solve the differential equation, we get a set of number instead of a particular value. Similarly, the observer, they get a set of data instead of a particular value. So there is a truth is one, the form is many. God is one, the form is many. Similarly, the distance between sun and earth is one. Because of the error in the measurement, they got a different value of the measurement error. Then Galileo postulated that the set of data, Galileo postulated that dialogues, then in the book, dialogue concerning two chief system of the world, Ptolemaic and Copernican. This in 1632 published. The true distance has a unique length and all observation contains error. That is your which device you are measuring, which telescope you are measuring, depends upon that what time you are measuring. These errors are symmetric about the true value because the expectation of true value is 1. These errors are symmetric about true value. Small errors are more frequent and compared to the large error. Galileo just postulated these things based on the observation. He did not do anything on the probability. Okay, let's to measure the astronomical data. It was the British mathematician Thomas Simpson. He noted based on the Galileo, he founded that errors are a true mean value. Whatever the data he got from different readings, he take the average. He think that average is a true value, and based on that, he first gives the Simpson's error curve, right? But this first error curve was a surprising straight line. It was showing that it was inconsistent with the Galileo's postulate. But small errors are the more frequency compared to the large one. Here, whether the small error, large error, they have same frequency, same probability, right? This first error curve some are discarded. Then Simpson give a second error curve. You can see over here, the error is symmetric, right? Galileo told it has a mean value, right? And the small error, okay, just suppose this is my mean value. The small error are highest frequency compared to the large error. This is inconsistent with the Galilean observation. But again, this has a problem that this has a discontinuity at the mean position, right? Just before the across the mean position, this takes a sharp turn. So this error curve cannot withstand for a long and could not explain the experimental measured data of the planet or astronomical data in those times. Okay. Next, to avoid those singularity, there are a lot of other famous mathematicians, Lambert, Legendre. They did a lot of things to find out and form the inconsistence with the Galilean postulation. So they replaced this kind of structure with a continuity is they postulate with the what semicircle. Then Legendre postulate with the Lagrange. Sorry, this is Lagrange. They replace with the parabola. Okay, all those things are fine. They did different approximation. I am not going to the mathematical details derivation, but these are the profile they got, and they want to fit the experimental observation from the astronomy with this error curve. This phi x represent the probability of the error, right? So then another mathematician, highly talented mathematician, his name is Laplace. Okay, Laplace has a deterministic view of the nature. Laplace and philosophy, future and past are of the universe can be in the Laplacian philosophy. Future and past of the universe can be precisely predicted, provided a current state is known. Here, somehow Laplace wants to calculate more deterministic thing from the uncertainty, right? According to Laplace, uncertainty about the outcome of any process is solely the function of ignorance, right? Then what he did, Laplace thought there are two things. He did the slope or d phi by dx is directly proportional to phi of x. Okay, the rate of error change with respect to the random variable is directly proportional to the probability of the random variable. He took this kind of mathematical thing, and then finally what he got? He got the probability of error curve in terms of the exponential series. But again, what this distribution has a problem. This distribution has a singularity at the mean point, right? He assumed what? The d phi by dt equals to phi of x. The rate of change of error with respect to x is directly proportional to the error itself. With that, he derived it. But what he found? He found a discontinuity at the central position. To avoid that, he give another formula. Okay, that is the logarithmic law. He found that errors are finite, so that's why error bound he has taken. Suppose minus error, my measured data is lie from minus a to plus a. He have taken the span of the data 1 by 2a, then ln a by x factorial he put it there. But here this distribution has another shortcoming that at x is equal to 0, the mean value, this approaches the x is equal to a, this approaches the infinite, right? So this summa get also he with this measurement certain delicate measurement between the Mars and Earth. I think some delicate measurement he can able to verify with his distribution, but again universally this failed to explain all the astronomical measurement. Then that's the Gauss. He's an all-time highly talented mathematician. Every field of mathematics he did a lot. So he was analogous to Galileo. He thought analogous to Galileo. What Galileo thought century ago. Gauss also agreed that average of the most likely measurement among the several measurement of the same quantity. So then Gauss used what? He used the least square criterion for the locate the orbit. It was just fitting for the observation. Least square criterion means suppose you have a truth value. Okay, if you take the difference between the random reading and the truth value and do the square, because either the truth value may be less than the measured value or it may be greater than the measured value. If you take the only simple algebraic difference, then plus minus is going to cancel. That's why it is need that what he did after subtracting the truth value from each random reading, he do the square of it and calculate and try to minimize that with respect to the thing. He taken the derivative, it becomes the least square. Okay, by doing so, he derived a curve, okay, which is known as Gaussian curve, right? This curve, what he did, universally, it was that time explain all the available astronomical data, okay, and is known as Gauss error curve. And these are represented by that. This is a probability distribution, and this represented by exponential of e to the power x square. What he did, Laplace mistake was, instead of x, he was measuring e to the power of x square. He was measuring absolute value of the x. Okay, here what he did, Gauss did the x square term. That's why he gave the Gaussian distribution. It is more towards the universal and explain all the astronomical data. It is late 18th century. Okay. Then after the derivation of the Gauss, Laplace again went through the Gauss work, right? Revolution work. Then from the analogy of the Gauss work, Laplace put forward the central limit theorem. We will see what is the central limit theorem, how it is applicable. And in the after the post discovery of this Gaussian distribution, the Scottish celebrity scientist James Maxwell, he used this Gauss-Laplace distribution synthesis to express the kinetic theory of gas, that is the velocity of the distribution. British mathematician John Venn, he considered Gaussian distribution for his logic of chance book, right? The Henry Poincare, he also used this Gaussian thermodynamics book. He also used this Gauss-Laplace synthesis. Gauss-Laplace error curve was the most compelling and rational finding and regarded one of the most significant milestone of the history of science. Okay, so Gauss-Laplace synthesis was the staple astronomy and other physical science in mid of 1800. In 1900, these are fully discussed into the other branches of science and engineering and social science. Right. So now, what was sampling? Okay. Before going further to the Gauss-Laplace synthesis or its modern form or the central limit theorem, let's understand the sampling. If I ask you, what is the weight of the kangaroo found in the Australia? What is the weight of the kiwi found in the New Zealand? Kiwi. What is the size of the mango or weight of the mango found in India? So what is the option for you? Either go to Australia, take each kangaroo, pick each kangaroo, take its reading. Okay, thousands of kangaroo you pick in the Australia and take their reading and do your data. All the mango produced in India in a year, you take their weight, take their size and give the data. This is one option, right? The other option is that going for millions of kangaroo or tracking millions of kangaroo and taking their weight, taking all the mango for weighting, randomly sample, pick few mangoes from the species, okay, then measure it based on the random sample observation, you give the inference, right? So this process is known as sampling. From all the available space, randomly pick few samples of data, okay, and then measure it. From this measurement, give the inference, right? This is a somewhat viable instead of taking all mango. This is somewhat feasible thing. I pick randomly few mango, okay. So again, this process give you the correct value once the process of the distribution is independent, identical and independent. This is not any bias. Okay, selection is purely random. Okay, mean and standard deviation of the random variable is known as statistics. For a sample, the mean and random variable of the sample is known as statistics, where for the entire population it's known as a parameter. Suppose all the available kangaroo in the Australia, you are taking the average thing, it is known as parameter. While you are taking randomly 100 kangaroo and making finding their average weight, this is a statistic. Probability distribution of this random sample is called sampling distribution. Okay. Sampling of the mean variance. Suppose this is my n number of kangaroo, 100 number of kangaroo you have taken. What is the mean of the kangaroo? Each kangaroo weight divided by number of kangaroo, right? Similarly, based on that, you can also calculate the standard deviation. Here, instead of n, it's equal to n minus 1 to have a unbiased estimator, right? This let's come. What is the central limit theorem? Okay, the central limit theorem is significant contribution to the modern mathematics by Laplace. Distribution of a sample mean tends towards the Gauss-Laplace distribution as the sample size substantially increases, regardless of the sample original distribution of the population from which the random samples are, random spaces are sampled. So if you are confused with the mathematical statement, with the next exercise I did in the next slide, it will be much clearer for you. But what from the Gauss derivation Laplace did, he put forward the ancient or the classical form of the central limit theorem. He is telling you have a sample, doesn't matter, sorry, you have a species, doesn't matter, whatever the distribution it has, if you are taking a large number of sample and doing the sampling, the sample distribution is some Gauss-Laplace synthesis, right? So this is another way to represent that. This is my sample mean, this is my true mean. If you subtract the sample mean to the true mean and divided with the standard deviation divided by square root of a number of sample taken, this is somehow the process of normalizing the variable. This is somehow process of normalizing the variable. Once you are normalizing the variable, the Gauss-Laplace synthesis you can represent in terms of normal variable instead of the directly the variable or Zn you can represent over there, right? So let's take the example of the central limit theorem. Okay, I have the Ludo dice. Okay, each time I throw the Ludo dice, the chance of getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they are equal. They are 1/6. That's why what will happen? I have a continuous distribution over here, though having a probability value of 1/6, right? But again, what I did the sampling. Okay, I will take the roll it 11 times. What is the average I will get it value? Okay, once I get it, 1, 2, 3, I will get it. I roll the Ludo dice 11 times. What is the average value of the sample? I get it. Then if I notice that way, I will find that the average somewhere between 3.5 is the maximum probability. Find the average value of 1 and 6, they gradually goes up decreasing, right? This is for 11 number of times if I do put the Ludo dice and take the average, right? Similarly, 31 number of time I put the Ludo. These are experiment I did it to find the value. Okay. Similarly, 31 times I roll the Ludo dice and take the average. You can see that as n tends number of samples or n tends to a large number compared to 31, 41, 51, you can see the uniform distribution. The original distribution is uniform, 1/6. When I did the sampling, take the two data and find the average, and I did it for multiple times. Okay. For a higher number of n, you can see the uniform distribution become how much? The uniform distribution become a Gauss-Laplace distribution, right? Similarly, if you have an exponential distribution at the beginning, right? From the exponential distribution, randomly I can pick 20 of the point and take their average and find the distribution of the thing. After taking 20 sample, I found the distribution somehow looks like this, very noisy. Okay. Once I am taking the 100 sample from my exponential initial distribution, this somehow close to my Gauss-Laplace distribution. If I take more number of samples, this will become very smooth curve of the Gauss-Laplace distribution. Okay, so this is central limit theorem. Even if you have an initial species as a Gaussian distribution, after doing the sampling, you will get a sample curve of Gaussian distribution. I will explain why it is. Next slide, I will explain. Okay, then for any arbitrary shape population probability distribution of the original population, if you do sampling for a large number of species, the probability distribution becomes Gaussian in nature, right? So the more knowledge becomes widespread, the more do you deviations from the average diminish, right? And the more do we tend to the approach that which the beautiful and which is good. This is a Quetelet. Okay, we'll find it. So I told you one more thing, that the Gaussian central limit theorem, the Gaussian distribution, if you do the sampling of the Gaussian distribution, this is again Gaussian distribution. Here I will come to another branch of mathematics which is highly related, but I scope of purview of this beyond the purview of this lecture to explain details. But again, Fourier transformation. What happens if you do the Fourier transformation of a function? Suppose you are in a time domain, you do the Fourier transformation, you shift it to what? Signal domain. Okay. Similarly, in the physics system, if it is a momentum space, after doing the Fourier transform, we will transform into position space, right? So the Gaussian distribution, if you do the Fourier transform for a Gaussian distribution, the Fourier transform of the Gaussian distribution is what? Another Gaussian function, right? So why the same thing will happen? Okay. So if you know the Fourier transformation, okay, if something is simply multiplying in the time domain, you know the convolution of two functions, they generate the third function. Okay, suppose this function is a h of x and f of x is the function, I can convolve them to generate the third function, right? So if you do what? Fourier transformation of the each function, take the convolution of them. Suppose you are doing it in the frequency domain. Okay, I know it is a bit fast for the thing because it is bit quite unfamiliar, but believe me, it is beyond the purview to give the detailed explanation of the Fourier theory. But again, I will come to the interesting conclusion from this. So just for the timing, remember that something you are convolving either in the time domain or frequency domain, they are just multiplied in the other counterpart domain. Suppose you are convolving in the frequency domain, signals are multiplied in the time domain. As signals are multiplied in the time domain, their strength is goes on increasing, right? One strength is goes and increasing as per the law of large number. What shape they are getting? They are getting the Gaussian shape, right? So if you can see the filter design, normally for the turbulence or the high pass filter when we are designing, we are getting a high range of that. Those who are from the signal processing background, they might be know for a few signal data you are getting from it. It is very difficult to find an average. It is very difficult to find a standard deviation because the data are noisy. From this point of view, what they do, we do the convolution with the same function. Here f and sorry, here f of x, g of x are two different functions. Imagine we replace g of x with f of x. Means we are convolving the same function with the same function. Means just we are multiplying the strength of the available function with the same available function to take more reading, right? If you convolve with, the randomness will be gone, the chaotic things will be gone. Again, if you convolve the second convolution, you will get some this pattern. The third convolution, you will properly get the Gaussian distribution. From this distribution, what we will find? The noise is part is gone. The noise part is cancelled almost. You will get a proper mean, proper standard deviation after convolution during the filter design. So this is the thing. So another interesting thing is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. What it is telling, the momentum and position you cannot be precisely measured. If you come to the distribution function, this Dirac delta function and all, they are bit difficult to catch for the non-frequent user. But a simple what I am telling, the Fourier transformation in of a Gaussian Fourier transformation of a Gaussian distribution and another Gaussian distribution, right? So what normally happen in the Fourier transformation, we do from the time space to frequency space. Similarly, for physics, it is momentum space to position space. Imagine here what is happening as the standard deviation. This is a solid curve, right? In this curve, mean is giving the central position. The most important statistical quantity is the standard deviation. In this curve, as standard deviation goes on increasing, here the standard deviation goes on decreasing. Suppose is my momentum space, right? To calculate precisely the momentum of the particle, what I need to do? I need to do the standard deviation close to zero. Once the standard deviation close to zero, I can properly find out the momentum. Okay, this is my deterministic value of the momentum. By the time the momentum precisely located here, the standard deviation zero, here the standard deviation will be infinity. This curve will be flat curve one, right? Similarly, when in the position space, you are properly find the position of a particle with the standard deviation zero, that time its momentum tends to infinity, right? This curve will be again flat because the standard deviation value will goes back to infinity, right? So that's why the Heisenberg uncertainty principle for momentum and position you cannot measure simultaneously. We all learn in physics, but again here is the explanation based on the Fourier transformation and probability theory. We can certify the same thing in the quantum mechanics. Let's come central limit theorem we have gone through. Okay, the central limit theorem is one of the prominent discovery in the probability and statistics. After Laplace initial theory about central limit theorem, the use of Gauss-Laplace distribution was initially restricted to error measurement. Obvious, all by astronomers they did the discovery for validation of the astronomical data. Belgian mathematician, astronomer, statistician, sociologist Jacques Outlet, he extracted the information about the chest measurement of Scottish soldier and published Edinburgh Medical and Surgical Journal. Even if the human chest measurement, they follow also the normal Gauss-Laplace synthesis. Outlet is known as the father of quantitative social scientist, right? He did apply mathematics to the quantification for the social science. In 1835, Outlet used Gauss-Laplace distribution for modeling of human psychological and social traits. Now see, something discovered out of pure game of Ludo, dice, gambling, then they shifted to physics, astronomy, then that becomes shifted to the social science. The math is same, the application is different, right? Followers of the Outlet, enthusiastic Victorian era English statistician Sir Francis Galton fitted the physical traits like height, weight, strength, exam scores, weight of the sweet peas, etc. into the bell curve in or the Gauss-Laplace curve in 1863. Right? Galton started the practice of standardizing the physical trait and perfect fitting of bell curve. Right? Now see, the extension has been done. Even if the all human height we measure in the people across the India and put it, it's definitely going to be fit in a bell curve kind of thing. Okay. Then again the question, we know why it is bell curve, it is looking bell shape. Why it is Gauss distribution, Gauss derive it. Then some people call it Gauss Laplace synthesis. Okay, Laplace has a view, but why it's a normal distribution, right? So question is obvious. Why the Gauss Laplace distribution has a name normal distribution? Gauss himself the coined the term normal concerning the nature of the equation, because the exponential form function, it is a orthonormal function, right? Sine cosine you will get it if you do the series expansion. But in 19th century, the term normal was used an adjective by Charles Peirce and many other natural philosophers. The English mathematician, biostatistician, pioneer of the mathematical statistics, Carl Pearson popularized Gauss Laplace distribution as normal distribution in 1893. Right. So the sole intention was that this Pearson wants, because why Gauss will take all the name and fame, although Laplace has a significant contribution. That's why his intention was to give the credit both Gauss and Laplace. That's why he called this Gauss Laplace discovery. So equally credit and Gauss call it as a instead of Gaussian curve, he called it a normal curve or normal distribution, because he want to give the credit equal to Gauss and Laplace. But at the same time, he forget that the original inventor was De Morgan. He did not. He forget to give the credit to De Morgan in his original work, till he realized that he did a mistake by not including De Morgan with Gauss and Laplace to give equal credit. This curve was so famous by a normal distribution, it was impossible to change the name again. That in a joke, Pearson clarified naming the Gauss Laplace distribution as a normal distribution doesn't endorse the other distribution are abnormal. Okay, so this is the normal distribution. So now coming to the thing, Six Sigma. Quickly we'll come to the end of the lecture. So now many of the things are undergo Blackboard training. Now the Six Sigma, data scientists, all those things. Now what is the Six Sigma actually? Once you have a curve, you have a lot of data, you find the mean, you find the standard deviation, you feed them into the bell curve. Now the Gauss distribution is known to you exponentially. Then you take the minus square of the random variable. Then the coefficients are known from the mu and sigma already calculated from the data. So approximately 68% of all the data lies within the range of one standard deviation. Means across the mean, if you calculate the data, minus sigma to sigma within this 2 sigma limit, almost how much? 68% of the data lies, right? If you take minus plus 2 sigma to minus 2 sigma with 4 sigma range, almost 95% of the data lies. If you take 3 sigma to minus 3 sigma, almost 6 sigma range, how much? 99.7% of the data lies. What it physically explains. Okay, so suppose you have a cellular company, Motorola or some mobile company, 5,000 cell phone you are producing per day, right? To get into Six Sigma certification, there should not be more than 15, 0.3% of the 5,000, 15 defective cell phone if you are not producing per day, then your product is Six Sigma certified, right? Often industries spend more into training of this black belt and other things to match this Six Sigma standard. Okay, this production business is something beyond my scope also to explain in this mathematical class. So for us, we are using this for the turbulence modeling. This is the recent paper of Professor Tapan Sengupta, who is my collaborator for a recent book in turbulence. He did some work on the turbulence. You can see this kind of, he is telling this is a boundary layer flow. Okay, this is some pure CFD application. Till now, I just, without CFD, I explain everything in the mathematics point of view. Something CFD, he did the DNS, direct numerical simulation of some boundary layer flow instability, different mode of interaction. Then what he find with respect to time, you can see the distribution gradually as time goes on increasing from 100 to 140. Okay, the any arbitrary distribution, they are gradually get what? They're getting the normal distribution set. Right? Again, the law of large number. Even if there are a lot of more things, okay, it's in a single class difficult to explain. More application of the law of large number and the modern form of the central limit theorem. The after Kolmogorov discovery, what is the development, recent development is central limit theorem. But in this lecture, all the possible information I share regarding the modeling, statistical modeling, of the bell curve, right? So if you are someone is interested, these are some highly recommended book you can follow for the most towards the historical side to make the lecture more interesting. I normally follow this book, Measurement of Uncertainty Before 1900. This is a Betna Press, Harvard University. The Anders Hall. This is again another one of my uh, most interesting book for me. Okay, favorite book. So all this book you can follow it if you are more interested to know the discovery. So with this, I am giving the uh, things to the audience for any question. I am open to take any open question by the audience.
Audience, please, if you have any questions, put it in chat box. Sir will answer for your questions.
Just a madam, let me see the chat box.
Yeah, yes, sir. Long before, I saw a question that somebody asked why you are using only binomial and why can't we use Poisson? I saw a question long earlier.
Okay, ma'am, chat box is not visible to me. If you can translate the question to me voice mode, I will answer it. Okay, that's a fantastic question. Also, next question is something like a call center modeling. If you are in a call center, what is the probability of this number of call to come by this point of time? Those kind of modeling normally we do by this Poisson process. But while there is a two alternative available, name itself suggesting the binomial, toss a coin either head or tail, right? So those, because of the operation, two kind of option is available. We are taking the binomial distribution for that kind of process. The Poisson process has different origin. I am in the call center. What is the probability of 6 call will be placed before me before 11 o'clock? So to modeling those kind of thing, we are using the Poisson's process.
Okay, I'm able to see only the chat box. Thank you, sir. Wonderful session. Excellent, sir. We want the PPT to be shared, etc. The same thing they are giving. And no more questions till now. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So from audience side, no questions, I think, sir. Thank you for your wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you, madam.
So the message is for yours, I think. The battery is low. Yeah, I thought it's my laptop. Okay, no problem, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful session, sir. There is one question. Normal distribution and Gauss-Laplace equation are same for using central limit theorem. Yeah, one of the audience, Ranjita, has asked a question. Normal distribution and Gauss-Laplace equation are same for using central limit theorem.
Yeah, I explained it. The same thing, Gauss-Laplace distribution. This Pearson named it as a normal distribution later to give the equal credit to all people. And the central limit theorem is nothing. Initially, whatever the distribution you have for the species, once you do the sampling, your species sample, the species average or species sample, for if you're taking a large number of samples, they will definitely going to fall in the normal distribution.
Okay. And one more question is there, sir, using this regarding, can we get the COVID-19 as bell shape? COVID-19 as bell shape?
Yeah, still I don't think we have a large number of sample available compared to the population size of 1.35 billion. Still 80,000 sample size is low. So I don't wish it should be increased, but as I remember, it has some different mathematical distribution other than normal distribution. It's not like that normal distribution. COVID-19 follows normal distribution, but again, once the sample size is more, it may be. But one more thing, if you can modeling the other aspect of the COVID-19, okay, so the age group versus the disease spreading, okay. So if you put the most of the vulnerable age group, they are exposed to the disease are either old people more than 60 or the people less than 10 years old, right? If you can do, they will come to two sides of the end of the fat curve. They are more susceptible in the reverse way, and the mid of the curve maybe they are having a high immune system. That's why they are less exposure to vulnerable to this disease after exposure to COVID-19. Even if they get disease, there may be revival or recovery from the from pandemic. So the revival rate, yeah, I feel the revival rate from the COVID-19, if you model your normal distribution, maybe help you.
Okay. So one more question, sir. What is the difference between normal distribution and probability distribution?
Yeah, there are a lot of kind of probability distribution. Uniform distribution, then there is a chi-square or student distribution, log normal distribution. This normal distribution is a one kind of probability distribution which most of the physical process follows.
They have thanked everyone. Any other doubts, participants? Okay, that's all, sir. They are just thanking organizers as well as the resource persons.
I hope everyone enjoys this session. I also like to thank the audience for patiently listening for a long time.
Yeah, that's great thing, sir.
Okay. If the video is recorded, please share the video. I think this with the participant as well as with me. I think that will be helpful for them as well as.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I have recorded. Surely we'll share it, sir. Actually, I have to thank you very much for coming over here and spending time with us, sir. This was a wonderful session, actually. As a mathematician, we know very well what is the probability and the base of probability theory. And whatever you have done today is many unknown facts are there, like the history of probability theory, the mathematicians, their history, how it is developed. We have seen all mathematicians' photos also. It was awesome, sir. We really thank you for giving such an opportunity for us. And yes, on behalf of our participants also, they were maintaining silent throughout the session. Really, it's great. And many sessions I have attended, even many webinars, but there will be some disturbance throughout the session. But this participants, this set of people, they were listening quite to us, and we are really enjoying this also, sir. Thank you, sir, very much for your lectures, sir. Yes, sir.
To be honest, I am not a true mathematician.
Yeah.
To be honest, I am far away from mathematics. I am not a true mathematician.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Yes, sir. So, shall we end up the meeting, sir?
Yeah, we can come to the end of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, participants. Hope you have enjoyed. Whatever queries you asked for the organizers, that is, you have asked for the PPTs, you have asked for the video, you have asked for the certificates. Everything will be done in time. So you can contact the organizer, Mrs. Prasanna Jayanti ma'am, if you have any doubts. But we need some time for sending the certificates. So you have to wait for till that. And thank you very much for coming over here and joining in this webinar. And really, we had a very wonderful time. And thanks for your comments also. Thank you very much. So I'm ending up the meeting. Thank you. And thank you, Prasanna Jayanti ma'am, for organizing this wonderful event. And really, for these 3 days, we also enjoyed with the 3 different titles, their lectures. Really, thank you for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.